Letting him grow a beard, huh?
Hi. Hi, Karen. Hey, would you be okay with saying our prayer tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I get for showing up on time.
Yeah. Well, I usually don't do the pledge and the prayer because I'm always talking otherwise. So others can.
I usually stand for the prayer, right?
Yeah,
Stand
yeah,
up. Okay.
yeah. You don't want to do that. So how's your missionary doing?
Pretty good. It
Yeah.
is a tough area.
Yes,
She's
sir.
in a really tough area, but
Mm,
she's doing okay. She's strong. But the first last week when she called, when she first got to her area, she's like,
it's a shock to the
"I'm just trying to
system.
figure out how to stop crying."
It's a shock. It's a shock.
It's really tough.
We just had we will have 3 grandchildren out right now.
Oh,
The third one just went into home MTC
oh, that's
Monday.
amazing.
I know. That's what we're saying too.
Amazing. That's a lot.
I know.
That's a lot.
We have 4 daughters, but we have 3.
That's amazing.
And the youngest one, her kids aren't old enough to go. So one from every family. Oh my gosh.
She's going. Have you ever heard of Ely, Nevada?
Mhm.
That's where she is. So it's an interesting.
I record.
Well, we have a grandson. This grandson will going to Lima, Peru, and their granddaughters are in Arequipa, Peru.
Those are tough.
Yeah, and one that's in Arequipa just barely got to the back. She had to come home because she got this cyst, pine needle cyst above her buttocks, and I guess it's caused from like ingrown hair in it. Ended up in a Peruvian hospital, and then the church said, "You got to come home." I know, and she had surgery there, and then she had to come home and have another surgery. So after 2 months, she just went back out to Peru. She was so sad that they that she had to come home, and then she was so
Ready for dinner, I guess.
Scott, will you do the pledge?
Yes.
Okay. I know.
Funny, our daughter actually is closer to Kiss. She lives closer to the her mission family.
It's amazing, isn't it?
She did get to go to
Oh my goodness. We better get ready to start, huh?
It's that kind of night.
Yeah.
Start with the police.
That's what we're doing?
It doesn't look like it's doing it.
Last
It's
time.
that kind of night.
Yeah, well, I haven't had dinner yet.
I like it. I like it.
Well, I guess we've got 6 of us here, so I guess we can go ahead and start. We can thank you for that last time.
My son that we just got from the Philippines MTC just sent an email, so I'm like, he made it, he's alive.
That's awesome.
Are you ready?
My son for like 24 hours after he was supposed to be there, but so that was nervous.
I think there must have been a couple on the plane with him, because he sent a quick text with just a picture when he landed.
Nice.
But
Are you ready? We'd like to welcome you to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for November 14th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded. We're going to begin the meeting this evening with an opening prayer by Commissioner Danielson and a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Thompson.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered tonight, and we're grateful that we can work in this great city. We are grateful for the community and the people that live here. We pray that we may be able to accomplish the things that need to be done tonight, and that we may be able to understand each other and different points of view, and that we can come together on conclusions. And we thank thee for this wonderful nation that we live in, and we say it's in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Will the audience please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The audience may be seated.
Okay, we're going to begin our meeting this evening with a roll call of the commissioners. Sharon Call, here. Mike Marchbanks hasn't arrived, at least not yet. Jared Showers.
Here.
Rob Callis.
Here.
Stephen Johnson.
Here.
Karen Danielson.
Here.
And Scott Thompson.
Here.
Okay. The second item on our agenda, this is an approval of the minutes from November 10th, 2023. Commissioners have received these ahead of time, had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes from commissioners? I didn't see anything, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion for approval, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And Commissioner Marchbanks has joined us this evening. Okay, item number 3 on our agenda is a time for public comment. This would be for any items that are not already on the agenda for this evening. Okay, sir, would you like to come up to the front? And if you could give us your name, sir.
Should I stand?
You can sit if you'd like to.
My name is Mark Davis. I'm a Lindon City resident of over 30 years, 900 East homeowner, and a concerned citizen. I have something I would like to bring up to the city. I hope this is the format for it. I have emailed Mr. Florence a time or two about this item. Can I just read from this? Is that okay?
That's fine.
The purpose of my visit and presentation is to persuade the city to help initiate discussions with the school district and possibly the church to allow an access from 200 South to the temple site, and then subsequently to support this access if all parties align. Support it through an appropriate licensing and permitting, I presume. There are many benefits of this access, which I will outline, and I hope you will find my proposal to be logical and feasible. I do appreciate your time. Thank you for your time and attention to this. As it currently is, all traffic going to the temple has to be funneled down Center Street. And I'm concerned about traffic congestion on Center Street, as well as all the school-age pedestrians that walk up and down that street. Virtually every kid that attends elementary school or Oak Canyon Junior High, nearly all of them walk down Center Street from East Lindon. I know that the church did submit traffic studies when they submitted their, for their site permit, and I appreciate your consideration of them. However, I feel like there are additional considerations to take into account. I've learned that approximately 70% of the temple visitors will be coming from the side, the Orem side of 200 South. There are 16 stakes. For those unfamiliar, that's a geographic allocation of members of the church that will be attending the temple. So 11 of the 16 stakes are all in Orem. So that's, if you just do the rough math, it's approximately 70% of all temple patrons are going to be coming from the south. So that means that approximately 70% of all temple traffic will be using 900 East as the access road, and 100% will be channeling up and down Center Street. If you compare the access that is provided for as it currently is for the Lindon Temple, you compare it to other similar sized temples, like the one in Provo, or the Provo City Center, or the Mount Timpanogos, all of those have multiple points of access from major collector roads. And we are forcing all traffic down one point of access through one road that is a major collector road up essentially to it's categorized as a major collector road up to essentially the temple site, but then east of that, including the new part of that for you longtime city residents, it's just a minor collector road. So I'm concerned about the access, I'm concerned about pedestrians, I'm concerned about traffic on my road, which is 900 East. The bottleneck effect of Center Street as the sole access would unnecessarily increase risk to Lindon citizens and Alpine School District constituents. 900 East is and always has been a minor collector road, unequipped for such a traffic increase. The bottleneck on Center Street and the traffic on 900 East would encourage drivers to use cut-throughs like on 500 East, which passes in front of the elementary school, and Canal Drive, which passes past Oak Canyon, further increasing pedestrian risk unnecessarily. And it will encourage people to use unsafe speeds on 900 East. Now, I've taken some informal polls with some anecdotal evidence, and virtually every North Orem resident and every Lindon resident that I've talked with about this just feel it's short-sighted and it should be reconsidered for an access through there. I would point out that I'm well familiar with the logistics and the use of the Oak Canyon field. I was Pleasant Grove Lacrosse Board president for several years and part of the operation of Pleasant Grove Lacrosse for 10 plus years. And lacrosse is probably 90% of the field use of that field. It just doesn't get used for anything else, very little. And a 30 or 40 foot or even a 50-foot access road through there along the eastern boundary, so just parallel with the canal trail, would not negatively affect the use of that field at all. And I'm just hopeful. So I know that the city cannot, Mr. Florence pointed out, the city can't go back to the church and require this access. However, I think the city could encourage the school district to come back to the table, and the city could encourage the church to come back to the table. I also have some contacts at the church, in church real estate. I could try to influence from that side as well. But I'm just hopeful that all parties, I mean, the school district has a vested interest in this. The city definitely has a vested interest in this, and the church has a vested interest in it. And it's completely logical and reasonable and completely possible. You know, if there were homes in that field, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But it's 8+ acres of grass, and has ample space to provide an access drive through that east side of that field. So I'm hoping that the city would see it appropriate to reach out to the school district and make the suggestion. And if they will, I know Mr. Florence has contact with the project manager, the church's project manager over here as well. I think he could have some influence, and there are others that I would reach out to if I felt like it was even a possibility on the school district side. There are others that I could try to help influence to get those discussions going. Any
Appreciate
questions?
those comments, and that's been my understanding, and Mike Florence can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was a decision the church made to have all 3 of those accesses on Center Street. Is that correct? That wasn't,
I have contacted the church. The church wanted an access. The church
That's what
wanted
I
the property.
understand.
The school district is in the driver's
The
seat.
bottleneck
They
was
didn't want it.
was the school district.
That was my understanding too. I actually thought that they had proposed the access, but the project manager that Mr. Florence talked with, I can't remember his name right now, Jacob.
James
Ja-
Rich.
Yeah, indicated that the church didn't talk to him about an access point,
that's what I understood.
which would be which makes my proposal even more relevant. I mean, if we actually never even had the discussion, we just talked about, because I know they were trying to work out a land swap or something because they wanted it on that field, and that didn't, come to fruition, obviously. But even if it has been discussed, frankly, I feel like it should be discussed again. So I'm asking for the city to do what they can I presume you have contacts with the school district, to see if they would be willing to come back to the table and discuss an access through there. And it actually wouldn't, I mean, now's, obviously 6 months ago would have been the time to do it, but now is also a good time to do it, before all the landscaping is in and everything else. Right now, I've looked at the, drone footage of the parking lot. You can tell, I mean, it literally looks like they built it to cut out 30 feet of curb. They would have to cut out 30 or 40 feet of curb, and it would just connect right in without any issues. I mean, the way it's built. So it really, obviously there's an expense to the church to do it, but I just can't imagine that the school district doesn't see that they have a vested interest in this. And so I'm hoping that maybe this commission can help them see that,
Okay.
the interest that they should have in that, if that's not already on their mind.
Appreciate those comments, and I as far as this commission, I mean, we could certainly express opinions on that, but it would go through city staff and the contacts that they have,
Okay.
and possibly the mayor with the
Yeah,
church.
I just wasn't sure. It's been in the short period of time. Mr. Florence hasn't, he and I have not met, but we talked about meeting. I just wasn't sure where to start, so I just wanted to keep this going.
Well, I think there's been all kinds of, I guess, comments go on that, at first I heard, well, the school district wouldn't negotiate, and then I heard, well, the church didn't ever ask the school district, and then you just hear all kinds of things, and so I'm not sure where the real story is on that is, but
That's
that
where
would
I'm
come
at,
through
too.
our
I'm
city
just
staff.
unsure, and I do think the church would see obviously they're never looking just to spend money, but I think that they would view that as money well spent to install a drive through there. You could make it so people, You can make it narrow so people don't park on it. It's simply just probably a 30-foot, I don't know, you guys would know better than I would, but a 30-foot access drive through there and don't let people park in it. It's just simply for access from 200 South. And
Okay. Appreciate those comments. And Mike, do you have anything to
No.
add?
any
to that?
suggestions for next steps from me?
I'll be emailing you sometimes in the morning. I talked to the city engineer today and got his schedule, and so I'll be emailing you in the morning sometimes that we can sit down and meet.
Okay. Okay,
And that would be great, because that's where it would come from.
okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, item number 4 on our agenda, this is a conditional use permit. It's actually just a 1-year review. And are you representing?
Yeah, I'm Bridget.
Okay. Are you Bridget Carpenter?
Yes.
Okay, well, come sit down. Okay, and this is something we really haven't done before, but when we gave the first approval for a massage, bodywork massage with a chiropractic office, we had stipulated they do a 1-year review, and so that's carried over to you, and we'll let Mike go ahead with that. Or, excuse me, it's Mary.
Yeah, well, Mary's not here this
Oh,
evening,
okay.
so
Okay.
I'll handle that. It was their anniversary, so.
Okay,
So, yeah, we appreciate Ms. Carpenter coming this evening. As was explained, the Planning Commission had the condition on that they approved with the conditional use permit, that there be a 12-month review by the Planning Commission, that the massage therapy ordinance was new, and so that's the reason the Planning Commission had both of those massage businesses that you reviewed last year, put a 12-month review in them. Now, the first one was Sin City Massage. That one's already closed. She's already gone out of business, so we don't need to do a review on that one. So Ms. Carpenter's our only other one. We talked to the chief of police. There has not been any calls for service to her business, so it's been operated well, and the city has not had any complaints. So with that, we can turn it back to you with any items of discussion. Mary did a great job providing information in your staff report of the ordinance and things, and we found that Ms. Carpenter at this point is complying with everything.
yeah. It sounds like your business licensing, all those things are in order, and you've been able to stay in business and do a great job. I don't have any other questions. Do any of you?
No, I think it's just a review, and that's been, all the questions have been answered.
Do we need to do anything?
You
is the
don't need to
question.
do anything, no.
No, I think it's like he
One-
said, we just wanted, because the ordinance was new, we just wanted to review it after a year, and from all the information we have, you've done a great job. So, we appreciate you coming in and appreciate you being in Lindon.
Thank you.
Just for my benefit and Ms. Carpenter's, that 12-month review, we don't need to do another one in 12 months, right? That one was
I
just
don't
for this
think
first
so.
one.
No, I
Okay,
think it was just.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I have a question on this, though. I mean, you can go ahead and go, it's just a general question. We had agreed to do the 1-year review on the Sin City one, and that went out of business. And I was a little bit confused. I thought this was the one that we had required the 1-year review on. So each one of these massage businesses that open, are we gonna do a 1-year review on that?
That'll be up to you when you hear the next one, if you want to continue that condition of approval or not.
Yeah, if I remember right, that we decided because they were so close together that we would put the same requirements on both of them. That's why this one was required for a review like the other one. It's that there were two that were really close, and we
Okay.
didn't feel it appropriate to put it on one and not the other.
Okay,
So when we do receive another one and it comes before you for a conditional use permit, that's something you can evaluate, and so.
okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda, and this is item number 5. And this is a review or a discussion work item on the commercial farm zone ordinance amendment. And Mike Florence will lead that discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll turn that to you.
So back in June, when the city council approved all the different applications and ordinance amendments for Wadley Farms, and hopefully had a chance to review the YouTube video, and I tried to give you a summary of the council's comments and the mayor's comments, but so the council had some concerns that they wanted city staff to evaluate. I've been looking at these a lot. There's a lot of opinions, so I just wanted to bring it before the commission and have a discussion with you. The property owners are here as well, Mr. College and Mr. Jorgensen are both here. They can provide some information as well. But the council really wanted to look at how the number of conditional uses that are allowed in the commercial farm zone. Those are listed here for you on 3B1. You know, it allows things like caretaker, farm help accessory dwelling unit, commercial horse stables, farmer's market, greenhouses, plant or garden nursery, garden center, bed and breakfast guest rooms, and so on and so on. So the thing that the council wanted to look at is are all of those uses appropriate? So if in one of these commercial farm zones or a future commercial farm zone, they could petition for a conditional use permit for each one of those uses. If, you know, they would still have to meet things such as parking, landscaping, you know, building coverage, but essentially you could, or a business owner could ask for each one of those items, and you know, is that appropriate for the neighborhood? These are in residential zones or surrounding residential zones, and so is that appropriate for each one of those uses? Should there be a cap on the number of uses in some way? And so I gave some examples in your staff report of things you could consider. The other item was the commercial.
Michael,
Yes,
just to make sure I understand what you just said.
yeah.
If another person applies for a commercial farm zone, all of these would come with that, or would each one have to be a conditional use?
So each one has to be a conditional use. So they have to come before you.
Each use in the commercial.
Each use, even our existing ones, even Wadley Farms and Walker Farms, they have to come before you for each one of those conditional uses. So that's like you approved the Red Barn at Wadley Farms for a retail, or for a cafe, or when you did that in May or June.
Right.
And so, yeah, every time
Okay.
the existing or a new commercial farm zone wanted one of those commercial uses, they have to come before you for a conditional use permit.
What about the overall farm zone? Is there anything that we're changing now that could possibly affect them, or are they grandfathered in as far as they have their farm zone, they're good to go at this point? And we're just gonna regulate the uses.
Yeah. The only thing that would maybe make them non-conforming is if you said, you know, you couldn't do a reception center use. You know, then they would be grandfathered or non-conforming. But right now, since like, let's say for example, a veterinary clinic. Nobody has a veterinary clinic, so there's no established use in the existing 2 zones we have. So you're not making anybody non-conforming if you were to remove that.
Does the city council feel that our uses are too broad?
No,
Or
they.
too many?
I think it's more. We've now had these for a number of years. We've seen how they've operated. Is the uses appropriate And is there enough just to protect the neighborhoods as well?
But if each one has to be given conditional use, what does it really?
Yeah,
Is it once it's on there, we have a hard time not approving it?
you have a really hard time not approving a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Unless there's things that can't be mitigated.
Mitigated, that's correct, that's that key word.
There was also, there originally was an amphitheater here.
Yes.
Did we ever define, I know the city council struck amphitheater on the last time they met, but is there a definition to an amphitheater? What is an amphitheater? Does that prevent outdoor music? Does that prevent, what's the definition of an amphitheater? So what are we trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, we don't have a definition of an amphitheater. But they wanted to strike that out, so they did that.
was an appropriate use.
Right, but so is that saying that any outdoor music, anything that would occur at an amphitheater is now prohibited?
I think that's a fair question. I mean, I can see like cowboy poetry or, I don't think that really is gonna bother the neighbors to have something.
Right,
like that.
that's what I'm saying, that's why, when they struck that, it's like, that was sort of broad on its face.
Yeah,
So maybe what were they trying to accomplish? What were they trying to restrict?
they were
Well, an
more,
amphitheater is actually a structure.
Right, I understand.
they,
Theater sort of is round and it goes down and
they were trying to restrict more the noise and maybe the sound levels.
Productions.
The example was given of, the swimming pool here, how you can hear the microphone and the music from a long ways away. They wanted to try and protect the neighborhood from maybe a similar type use.
Yeah, I mentioned that only because I know in Mr. College's presentation last time, he mentioned to the city council that they've had outdoor, like they showed a picture of some guy sitting on a trailer playing a guitar, sitting on a bale of hay. They were having some form of an outdoor concert.
And
I
I would,
don't see that as an amphitheater,
No.
a structure built, for productions.
Okay.
I think that's different.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
So, any other questions on uses or?
Well, there's a couple of them that I questioned, as far as the commercial farm zone and a couple of these that are on here. I can see a, small cafe type thing. But as far as a full-scale restaurant with all the parking that would require, to me, that doesn't quite go along with what the original intent was. That's one of my opinions. The other thing is, as far as the veterinarian clinic, and I was a part of things when this was put together, but to me that when you get into those kind of things, that's a different use. That's a commercial medical use for, animals. One of the others that I questioned was, let's see, I don't know about a commercial, and this crosses over a little bit, but because I know that with colleges, that you market your grape juice and all those kinds of things, and the Red Barn will be a little commercial store, and I know that Walker Farms has a little boutique, that kind of thing, but as far as a commercial garden center, to me, that kind of resonates with, a greenhouse type thing and commercial sales that way. So those are a couple of the things a couple of the ones that I questioned, but I don't know about the others. I don't, I guess, especially with the commercial garden center, to me that feels like a big scale commercial business. So those are a couple of my thoughts, but I don't know.
Another one I look at down there, 2,000, when I look at the last line, or food manufacturing not to exceed 2,000 feet.
Right.
I know we're here requiring them to be productive and to be able to generate, try to grow a profit. So we say it's food processing and production areas. So if we have a cafe and then we allow a restaurant, and then we also have a section, have to have a section for processing grapes or whatever we're doing, is 2,000 square feet sufficient? I guess that would be the question that would have to go to the owners of the property to determine whether that's sufficient, because I can see 2,000 square feet's not a lot if you're doing all of those uses that are permitted.
Well, that's what I thought with a restaurant. I don't know that it would be, how big would it be with these restrictions? What's the difference between a cafe and a restaurant? Like where does it start and stop, right?
I don't know between those two. Yeah, I don't think we define the difference between a restaurant and a cafe in our code.
Right, I mean, maybe we need to strike those and put something like food sales business or something.
Well, what if they do have
know?
a restaurant? I mean, what's the problem? I don't understand it, because if they have a restaurant, they're not gonna be, it'll be competing with their conference center. I mean, it's probably the same space. They might decide to have a restaurant on every Friday night or something like that. Is that a problem? I don't see it as one.
Yeah, we're not saying any of these right now are problems. What we're saying is, does anything need to be
Right, I'm just
looked at?
discussing that with
Yeah,
other staff members here.
And that's kind of what I was doing too, just some of my thoughts on it.
I mean, it could be, yeah, I don't see as big a problem, but I don't know.
I think,
So it would depend on the scale of the restaurant and how large and how much
Yeah.
parking was required and that kind of thing.
yeah, I think the thing is, are you okay as the planning commission, are we okay with a property having all of these uses? Are we okay with them having 13 uses there? Is that something you wanna look at restricting per acreage or allowing just so many uses? I think that's something the council wants you to look at is there some restrictions we should put on the uses for that?
I personally don't think that any of these are outlawing. Maybe the veterinarian clinic, I don't know.
Veterinary clinic, yeah, I don't see it. Is there, maybe we would ask is there a need to have a veterinary clinic? That's a business that's running on the property for the purpose of.
But there might be other things not on this.
It is a farm zone and.
I know,
and
it is. I mean,
animals
that's what-
usually are on a farm, I mean, and
But a
I've been to a lot of veterinarian clinics and there's usually not a lot heavy load for parking.
No.
Okay.
I would love to have a large animal
I was gonna say,
veterinary
large
clinic here in
animal.
Linden, and to put something like that in a commercial
Okay.
zone. You can get a horse that comes unglued because there's cars and traffic and things like that. I'd love to see a large animal veterinarian here in Linden.
That's what I was
Okay.
wondering.
Cause I gotta go clear down to Hatterley's
Fort,
office
yes,
down
but,
there
yeah.
to.
But my point
Where?
is, there might be some
Natalie.
things in here that I'd feel good about that aren't on here.
And now would be the time to,
And what are some of those?
I don't know, I haven't given it a lot of thought. I'm just saying, I'm not sure, I'm not sure I feel comfortable in saying, close the door and let's don't do any more.
And the bottom line is that I don't see any of them having all 13 uses on their property. They're gonna
No.
focus on what's profitable and what fits their particular property. I
Hey,
think
we
this is
asked-
just a,
May we ask the owners, is there something that you'd like to suggest being on there that isn't?
It's all conditional use anyway, so if you have a cafe or a restaurant, you have to have an ice cream store.
But what he's saying is that if we put it on there, then if somebody comes and brings it, we can't probably tell them no if it doesn't feel good. So
and
we
if-
wanna be careful to put it on.
Thinking about Sin City Massage, since they put that name to it.
and just a reminder, we may even want you guys to come sit up close to the front, just so, you can grab the microphone and talk, so we can get it on the record.
So- Well, if we're online, though, the public does want to hear your comments.
So are there any uses that
Yeah.
you would like to suggest we consider?
I'd like to hear your opinions.
Well, historically, with Adam Cowie, put this together. We came to the city, and you were all, most of it, part of it is how it is that we preserve agricultural production in Lindon. And that was the primary focus for what we did. It wasn't to build a convention center or these uses for which we've put in there. And this was free thinking as to what it is that we saw could be a benefit to have ancillary income to support agricultural production. That's what it was for. It wasn't the other way around. And so we put in there, as we free thought, what it is that maybe we would see in 10 years. Now, as you know, we're 10 years down the road and things have changed. We're saber rattling, we got wars going on. I mean, the economy, things are changing. Of course, none of us know the future, and isn't it good that we don't? We can only kind of project in our mind and give an educated guess, and that's what you saw in that bucket that we had. We put into it, and that was Adam and I, things that we saw then that may be of benefit. Now, as we go forward, we do know that the open space, production of farm to table, are for the most part going to be a thing of the past in Lindon. Property values are such that it's economically not viable to farm. And so as we see what it is we're trying to preserve, we believe that with the network of horse trails that traverse our place, that there may be a need for stables or veterinary clinic. I'm not sure. We see that with our network of trails for bikes, and we are now having more people come from all over the world as a destination, and we see possibly a need for a bike shop and bike trails of where they can go. We see people coming that want to know how to prune apple trees or develop vineyards, and they like to work with Carlos and his men to see how it's really done. We see people come, well, as we talked about movies, and we've had 4 movies shot, 2 this year. And we still produce, as you saw, 5,000 boxes of fruit this year. And the fresh fruit you got at Macy's and at Smith's and at the farmer's market and the road stands mostly came from Wadley Farms. And so we've been, we think, good stewards of the land and keeping with what it is that you've supported us in production of agricultural products. Farm to table, we think, is an option. So when we talk about restaurants, we're not sure what that all means. You've given us the option of doing an ice cream shop and things maybe in the Red Barn, and we think that may have merit. But it's, as our attorney friends say, it's a kind of a process of discovery. You're talking to, folks that have passion to keep it open space, to not subdivide, and leave it for future generations. We've been farming now 154 years in Lindon, and there's not many farm families that can say that, and you've been very good in supporting us and helping us maintain that. So in answer to your question, we have that soft bucket list, none of which I see is all that alarming or inflammatory. As Rob said, if we want to develop any of that, we would come back with Mike, and as we have done before, have our contested discussions, and we would comply with what it is that you agree. I think you've got that safety measure, and we certainly would not want to put anything that's cross with the city or with our neighbors. We wish to be good stewards of the land and good citizens, and wish to have what it is that we're preserving, something that Lindon can be proud of, future generations. And
do you feel like that some of these like, you know, there's a certain number of these conditions that are listed, there's quite a few. Do you think those should be limited at all as far as acreage of?
Well, as you've heard me
zone?
before, Sharon, the best indication of future performance is past. And I think it's different if you had an unknown entity, but you've had 154 years.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, but,
I
you know,
don't-
there's possibilities of, there's several other possibilities of people that could develop you know, under this ordinance.
Yeah, and I think that's a separate discussion. I wrote a letter. Did you all get it? Yeah, and that's, who do you allow to come into a commercial farm? And I know that we wish to preserve open space, and that should be a separate discussion. But the commercial farm that we put in place was for the production of farm goods. It wasn't so that it would be a token, you know, to allow other commercial ventures. And so in answer to your question, I think our discussion for commercial farm, those items that are listed are not, I don't see problematic, because you have the safety net of Europe having approval of them and doing that due diligence and making sure that they're compliant and so forth. You have that. As far as that other discussion as to who it is then that you allow in a commercial farm that would have then access to all of these, I think is a threshold that probably the bar should be raised. As I indicated, right now we have simply 5 acres, and by the time you do the build-out, that only leaves 2 acres of open space. And if it really is a commercial farm venture, then I think in the future that it would be wise to, if folks are coming to approach the city to be a commercial farm, that they would have then the threshold of greenbelt status to obtain. And that's done by the county, which also does an audit to make certain that greenbelt status is being productive, and it's well thought out, and it's been in process 60 years. So I think that's a separate discussion than these items in the bucket list.
Well, Mr. Jorgensen, what?
Can I ask
Go
one?
ahead.
Well,
Sure.
Since you were involved in the drafting of this paragraph, where did this not to exceed 2,000 square feet, and is that sufficient?
And we saw that as food preparation. To do food preparation, you have to have the FDA approval and inspections. And so we thought for our operations then, and it probably is still adequate for what it is that we would do, is we go forth with that product line of our grape and apple juice. We think, but it's a lot of work.
Is that manufacturing the right word?
I think so. If you're, I mean, that we have that in our code in other areas of the city, but if you're,
What is food manufacturing?
It'd be making grape juice.
Grape juice, apple juice. Is food manufacturing a restaurant? Is that that's not, that's different. Okay.
That's the way I feel.
Okay.
And food manufacturing could be orchards. So 2,000 square foot orchard is not a big orchard.
I don't think we would consider an orchard the food manufacturing.
Right.
That'd be part of the 40% open space or agricultural requirement.
But I'm assuming that's there so they don't put a Nestle food plant on it or something, you know, they wanted a small, related to what
What
they're
I was thinking is
processing.
maybe that word should better be process.
Food
But if
processing.
you're adding ingredients to your
And I also,
fruit or whatever, then it's.
yeah, and I also think that
processing
you're,
it.
you know, you have different sewer capacity requirements too in residential zones than you would in a industrial zone. So I think that's probably why you're,
It's small.
Well, I was just wondering, so if you're making grape juice out of grapes, is that grape manufacturing or is that grape processing? I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe it's.
Was there a
split.
trigger with the FDA? You mentioned the FDA. Is there a trigger with so many square feet then has to be regulated differently or no?
No,
No, okay.
not the square footage.
Well, what are some of your thoughts, Mr. Jorgensen?
Well, we don't have this size of property that
Right, right.
colleges have, and so we're kind of limited to what we do with what, kind of what we're doing. I
So-
talked to
Oh, go ahead.
Jim Dane, I called him about another matter, and he said that, we kind of visited about this a little bit. He says that, the farm zone, it's more about the open space than it is. When I grew up farming, it's been a long time since you've been able to make an anticipated profit on 40% of 5 acres. Unless you're growing dope or something you're not supposed to be growing. And talk about how PAC is and that we're gonna make an anticipated profit on that. It's just not, and try to pitch that to a bunch of descendants of farmers was kind of an interesting day. But anyway, the purpose of the zone, which I think has been, he's passionate about it, and I hope it's worked well. It's rather than have a whole subdivision of houses, you've got some neat things that, that if they weren't there, they'd just be another, subdivision.
Well, and both of your places are just absolutely beautiful. They're wonderful places,
Thank
and
you.
they have different functions. But I guess one question I would have is, as far as limiting uses by acreage, do you think that limits itself?
I don't, I know what you're saying by if it's on a conditional use, that would have a hard time turning it down, but I don't know that that's, the experience. If I wouldn't be able to have a food processing thing
Well,
because
that's
I'm
what I'm
limited to
saying.
property. Alan, he could have a processing center and his property absorbs all that. And so for somebody to come in like I did and piece together 5 acres to fit the ordinance, that's what I would, you sitting here listening to you guys talk about that, that's what I would worry about. Okay, say if somebody wants to have, just use my example of Sin City Massage on a commercial farm zone, if I go get 5 acres, I can do X, Y, Z. If that's, their goal for doing that. And so that's where you guys gotta be cautious about, what you allow and how you allow it. I don't, I'd love more than ever to, I'm in, shut the door. Approach it that way, that I've got mine now, make it so nobody else can, but I don't know that that's.
What would be the do you think your property complies with greenbelt? I don't even know what what's the legal definition for greenbelt?
I had that same question and asked Mike to help me understand that a little more, so there may be others that.
Yeah, and I wish Brian was here. He's,
I can tell you if you wanna know.
yeah.
Yeah, we need to know who you are.
My name's Dan Terry. Greenbelt is 5¼ acres within Utah County. And if you have other properties that are farmable within Utah County, you can connect them. They don't have to be contiguous. As a commercial farm has to be contiguous where the properties touch each other. Greenbelt has nothing to do with zoning. Greenbelt was established for tax purposes to reduce the amount of taxes for farmers so that they could afford to have agriculture products. But you have to have one piece within Utah County that is at least 5¼ acres in one parcel.
But from what I understand and what Mike told me, if a farmer had 5¼ acres and then they decided to develop that, they would have to
They have to go back and
pay the taxes on
I
it.
was a realtor for
Rollback taxes.
30 years.
Yeah.
Someone has to go back and pay taxes on it as though it was residential.
Right, right.
So here, this a little hard to see. Let me zoom in on that, but
But you can add to Greenbelt other parcels as long as you have one that's acres.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah, so this says is at least 5 contiguous acres in area, is actively devoted to agricultural use, so they've gotta have an agricultural use already going on there. Let's see, and if the land has been devoted to agricultural use for at least 2 successive years immediately preceding the tax year in which the application, so 2 years prior to when you're requesting to have that green belt on there, so.
The reporting is very thick. You have to report every little thing you grow, if you lease it out, if you have animals, if you grow hay, whatever you do, you have to report the usage to the Department of Agriculture.
But the purpose of that generally is for tax purposes.
Has nothing
Yeah.
to do with zoning.
Okay. Well, thank you. And did you give, I know you've been here before, but did you give us your name again?
And Terry,
Okay. And we just need it for the record.
I have a piece of Greenbelt property in Spanish Fork.
Okay. Well, I guess what it comes to, if you have other questions for these two, but I guess what it comes down to is whether we want to limit the number of conditional uses in
For-
this ordinance?
For this topic, I've got a couple other topics, but, that, at least on uses, yeah, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I sometimes think we're, on this particular one, we're trying to guess the future, and we really don't know what the future is. So I think if we can come up with this list, we've eliminated one, which is amphitheater. If we have this list, but if there's some degree of flexibility or other uses that the city council and may determine to be of value in the zone or something, to give us a little bit of flexibility maybe for the future. I know we typically like to have black and white. It complies, it doesn't comply. But this is a situation where we're sort of trying to guess the future. I don't know
Yeah,
what I don't know what anybody thinks about that.
if a use that's not on this list wanted to come in and say, I don't know, they wanted to do something that's not on the list, they would have to amend the ordinance.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So if we put a sentence in there that allowed it to at least proceed and give us some input and give the city council some input and and neighborhood input, and then maybe that would.
Would we have to do that, though?
We don't have to.
They could just
We don't
apply
have
to
to.
amend
They have
the
to apply to
ordinance.
amend the ordinance, but.
I think I'd feel more comfortable with that, cause then you are really being able to evaluate what impact it may have on the neighborhood
Okay.
surrounding it. You could have looking at traffic, maybe those types of things.
Well, again, I think there's probably some uses that are not on there that we could feel very good about being on there. But I don't know what they are yet, and as Mr. College says, they might be different in 2 years.
Yeah.
And I guess we just have to say, well, we'll just amend the ordinance.
So do all of you feel like,
We have
oh,
hand back.
okay, sir?
Just some suggestions kind of to incorporate into the considerations here. My name's Tanner, I'm Alan's son.
Okay.
He's the new project manager in it.
As you
We're-
can see his tag, he's going on vacation.
Sorry, Tanner.
He's going on vacation.
I should have done this with Deanne too, but we do need everybody to speak in a microphone.
Yes,
I'll give you my slide.
Okay.
So as you've all reiterated and kind of heard the backstory, in the past, we were looking at what these possible uses would be in the future. And obviously, we can't predict the future. So, one consideration would be add into that second clause that any additional proposed uses go before the city council or before the planning commission, and that make sure that any proposed uses are essentially congruent with the purpose of that commercial farm zone. Does it align? Because, we had this discussion with an Airbnb, and that kind of fell under this bed and breakfast umbrella, which at the time, when bed and breakfast existed, Airbnb did not. And so, rather than try to predict all these future uses, maybe adding in, I don't know where that falls with Mike and kind of the whole idea of this meeting, but adding in another section where you guys can be that vetting process and actually say, does this fit and go along with the purpose of the proposed commercial farm zone, which is to maintain this agricultural open space? And does it fit with that and support, the commercial venture that we'll hope maintain that open space.
What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
I like doing the ordinance amendment process. Because it gives the planning commission and council the opportunity to really evaluate, like I said, like parking and noise and those types of things. I feel like if you said, if you open this up and just said, we could evaluate anything, what standards are you going to use for those types of uses? And if in this, the way the state code is written, if there's any ambiguity, the tie goes to the applicant.
Okay.
And so,
Don't we have already a little bit of that in this, in that we were saying and associated facilities? See, I would interpret that to give us a little bit of flexibility.
Where is that?
I think it's
If
under.
we shouldn't have flexibility.
Well, that's under educational.
Well, it's under
ability.
education, so it's
So
gotta
that's
be,
strictly to the education.
it's
Yes.
between the two semicolons, so
Yeah.
it's, something to do with educational use.
10 years down the road, somebody wants to come and you're not in planning, and whoever's sitting at the desk, they walk in, that person just doesn't like that use. What's the process for them to amend the ordinance? Do they always have the right to do that, or can somebody just come to, no, we're not gonna allow, we're not gonna amend the
No,
ordinance?
anybody has a
What
right to-
triggers that?
Anybody has a right to file an application and be heard before the planning commission and city council on an ordinance amendment. We'll advise them, saying, sometimes we'll say, like, there's no way this is gonna pass, and, but it's their right to still go ahead with it and move forward, so. It's kinda like the residential on 700 North, how, the real estate agent wanted to just open up 700 North to residential. And I told him 100 times, this isn't gonna pass, this is too broad, it needs to be more specific, and he's like, he didn't wanna listen or take any advice, so.
Okay. So, as far as, and maybe this is revisiting just a little bit, but as far as acreage, like you said, if you've got a 5-acre commercial farm, or I can't remember how many acres yours is, 18 acres, do you want to put a limit on the number of conditional uses they can have for that, or do you think that's self-limiting by the size?
It's self-limiting by the size, and plus you don't know the size of a boutique could be defined as a cart outside there with a little bit of stuff on it. I mean, it's really, I think size-wise, I don't want to limit it by acreage.
So, okay, because that was one of the big things with
none of
the
these
city
things are-
council.
None of these
Well,
things.
you could have 3 uses in one building,
Yeah.
Right.
which don't take up a lot of square footage. So
Right.
I don't,
And they would all be conditional use,
yeah,
okay,
I think we leave it
Yeah,
the way it is.
I think it's a good starting place.
okay.
And I think we need to take into account the fact that city council did already review this, and they struck the one thing they wanted to be out of there.
But they also, the reason they ask us to
Right.
review it is to see if it needed to be tightened.
I understand, but that was the only thing that was glaring to them.
Okay.
I have no problem with what's left on the list.
Well, Mike, it sounds like,
I've got 2 more points that I
Okay, go
wanna
ahead.
discuss.
Okay.
So we've already been discussing this a little bit, about the 40% agricultural requirement. The council wanted to see, is there anything we need to do to tighten that up, a little bit? Councilman Powell said, someone could come in and grow dandelions, and is that the agricultural use? Is there things we need to review under that 40% agricultural
Where are
requirement?
they gonna sell those to?
Well, and that's fairly, there has to be an expectation of income, so, we're not auditing anything, but, how do we feel about that?
Well, I think, are we trying to prevent somebody from going out on State Street, tearing down a mall, coming in and planting dandelions, they got 5 acres and doing this, and so wouldn't the green belt requirement, which now says for the past 2 years, so it's more likely to occur in an orchard or something like that, and is there any place like that?
So we're not
Left in
requiring
Lindon.
green belt. So green belt, like Mr. College has green belt.
Right.
Mr. Jorgensen, I don't believe
You don't,
is.
because yours is, your agriculture is your animals.
So that we're not requiring that they do green belt. That, Mr. College made some good points about that. And that was a discussion at the council too. And we heard from 2 council members that they would prefer just to see the open space rather than, because they were worried if we're requiring somebody that they had to do agricultural use for 2 years prior to then going into green belt, would they rather just sell it into homes than just say it's open space?
So are you saying that, should we consider more than 40%?
No, I'm just saying that, following up on the council's comment, is there anything to put some standards in or tighten that up a little bit on that 40% requirement so that there's are we meeting the intent with our 2 commercial farm zones is kind of what they're saying. Are we meeting the intent of that 40% open space requirement? Is there anything we need to tighten up on that?
Is the term that the council came up with, to encourage strong agricultural use, what is, I mean, how do we define strong agricultural use, and what can we define that as? I think that's probably the basis of your question.
Yes.
Well, on a 5-acre parcel, 40% open space is a lot.
2 acres, as Mr.
Yeah.
College noted.
So do you have an, oh, sorry.
I don't know that we should monitor that they're, making money on that 40%. It's open space and that's what the code was designed to do. I just don't see a need for tweaking it personally.
Do you have an example of how you tighten it up? Like something you had in mind?
I don't, that's kind of why I'm
Okay.
bringing this before you, but,
Food or livestock production?
do you have to do some, I don't know, right off the top of my head, but is there some type of investment that needs to come off of that, I guess? Is it, I think Mr. Jorgensen's doing something with the alpaca fur, aren't you, or hair, aren't you doing something with that?
Yeah, Jill sells, spin it into wool and she sells it in her market.
Yeah,
Beyond.
but what if someone just brought in pigs, or something like that? Are we okay with something like that? Do we need to show more of a?
Mink.
Yes, yeah.
Mink or
What's
chickens?
a mink
I
farm?
lived on a farm. Mink and chickens, I'm just saying.
Well, and my question is, and I wasn't here when the original ordinance was drafted, but I think it's a difference between, are we looking for open space or are we looking for and this is the city council, I think it's 2 very different discussions. If we're looking for open space, it's one discussion. If we're looking for actual agriculture production, that's a very different discussion. And I don't know which one the city council wants, but I think that's the distinction. If we just want open space, then I think as it's written, it creates that open space.
Well, I think, let's go back to that.
But if it really wants production and we want to, preserve this ability to grow our own food or or raise animals or whatever, that's a very different.
Yeah, it says at least 40% of the property must be maintained in active agricultural production and to be managed in such a way that there's a reasonable expectation of profit.
That's well written.
To me, to make a profit, you'd have to at least make enough to pay for your taxes on that 40%. Do you do that on the alpaca?
Yes.
Do you?
I'm going in alpacas.
I just think it's very hard. We're getting too
Right, and I
far
guess-
into the weeds.
Well, and I guess that's the question, how important is that to the city council?
I don't know.
You know, I mean, if that's what they're driving, if that's gonna be the driving factor for future applications, that they really want it to be this production, that there's a reasonable possibility of profit, that's a very different question than preserving open space. And I don't know which question they want answered, but if it's for production, then I think these need to be tightened up somewhat to help ensure there's production. If the idea is to preserve open space, then I think the way it's written is great. But I don't know the intent of the city council
I think
And-
if we read it as the agricultural production.
intent, then I would say we probably need to look at somewhere to tighten that up, because even 5 acres is probably not enough to produce something that's gonna produce a profit.
Well, why don't we go back to what, the reason we're allowing these additional uses is to make it, to offset the fact that those is not gonna be profitable. So how about if it's rather than to make a profit, but to generate revenue to offset or make the farm viable or something, you know, it's able to, whatever they're doing there does generate revenue. So a daisy farm, you know, a weed farm isn't gonna generate revenue. So that, we could say it that way. So whatever venture they have has to generate revenue, which could then be used to offset the expenses of the commercial farm district.
I mean, it was brought up at the council meeting, the revenue could be $50, you know, and.
I agree, but.
And that,
And yeah, that's just my question with,
yeah.
as we look at intent, because if it's, at least my understanding of farming is, you know, you make a profit. You know, the IRS is saying, let's try, for normal business, it's 1 out of 7 years, and for farmers, it's 1 out of 15 or something like that, you know, to show that you have an intent. It's just given that you have an intent if you do that.
But if it's somebody's hobby or passion to farm, I don't, there's
Well,
no financial motivation in doing it, but they're doing it because they enjoy it.
Right. So I'm just saying, I'm fine with either one. I just don't know what the council's intent is with this ordinance. And if I read it as production and profit, then I think what doesn't meet that intent.
I think if it's profit, you're not gonna get there. I think if it's revenue, you can get there.
Yeah, that's why I say revenue's a little bit more, because we, you know, I don't know. Because even Alan's business, as large as it is, probably wouldn't survive just on apples and grapes. So I mean, but to say that whatever they're doing generates revenue for the maintenance of the commercial farm district,
Yeah.
then that sort of covers it and gives us a little bit of ability to say, so what do you want to do?
And I hope this comes across okay, because I'm pushing you just a little bit, because I do have to respond to the council on some of their questions, you know, if we decide not to do anything to this ordinance, or we decide so. Let's look at number 2 real quick under that, though. It does say, for the purposes of this chapter, agricultural production shall be defined as a production of food for human or animal consumption through the raising of crops or breeding and raising domestic animals and fowl in such a manner that there is a reasonable expectation of profit. So you could do a chicken farm here, you know?
There's a difference between 1,000 chickens and like 10. I'm just
Well,
saying.
that's a conditional use that would come back to us as well.
No.
No, not if they wanted to do chickens, I guess.
Not the 40%, you really, so.
Could we change the word profit to revenue? Would that help?
Under 3.
I don't think they're caught up on the profit and revenue thing. I think they're caught up on, is our ordinance, if we do, you know, because the council made the comment, we'd like to see 2 or 3 more of these in the city. Or if someone comes in tomorrow with an application, are we okay with how it currently says about agricultural production?
I'm okay with it, but I think under 3, number 1, 2, 3, reasonable expectation of profit should be changed to revenue.
Okay.
Reasonable expectation of revenue.
Rather than profit.
Rather than profit.
That's pretty broad. A
Yeah, but
reasonable
how-
expectation
It is,
of
but
revenue.
profit,
I
but
would,
we-
I would say
But it's
revenue, period, not I mean,
But it's
that there should be at
I mean,
least,
you're not gonna get a profit.
no, but a reasonable expectation doesn't mean that they have to have any revenue. And I would say that they should at least generate revenue if you're
Oh,
gonna.
yeah,
take
no,
must
I
do
see
it,
what
okay,
N-
okay.
Not a reasonable expectation of revenue, it
Or
should be
maybe we take off reasonable and put
that it
expectation
produces
of
revenue.
Yeah, good point. Reasonable is a.
Well, even just an expectation, you know,
Yeah.
Just as from my own interest with your alpacas, what, do you market the fur from that, or,
And
okay,
let's have a microphone. real
okay.
quick.
No, I'm interested in,
It's
I mean,
actually
it-
wool.
okay, wool, but as far as
what's the
a
question?
revenue source from the agriculture that you raise, you know, the animals you raise, livestock, what do you do?
So we share them every spring, and we either, most of the wool is spun into yarn, and then we sell the yarn.
Okay.
Some of it that's not as high a quality is just called roving, and we sell it as, it can be roving, which is used for felting, which is kind of a different thing, but roving or yarn,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. And, I mean, it doesn't need to be profitable, but does that bring a stream of revenue?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's not profitable, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you don't depend on the alpacas for
Right,
supporting
right,
your commercial farm?
right, right.
Okay, okay, well, that was just a question for my own interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you're knitters, it's great yarn.
Okay.
Sell this week.
Yes, sir.
Black Friday.
I guess back to my other point, I would assume that we can probably infer that the city council was fine with this preserving land. Because I would look at Walker Farms was more put together with an agriculture purpose, but maybe driven by the reception center. The agriculture wasn't there first, and the council passed that.
And their desire to have some open
And their
space.
desire to have some open space. So that somewhat answers my question, that that's the way they were leaning. I don't know, but if that's the way they're gonna continue to lean, maybe we do need to look at amending the ordinance to be more consistent with that. And not requiring the reasonable expectation of a profit, but I think that's something for the city council to maybe make it more consistent one way or the other. If they're wanting more of these, that's great. Let's make it so that someone can put 5 acres together and have a place, if that's the intent. But if the intent of the ordinance is to maintain and preserve production of food, that's a very different intent. And so I think that's the discussion that needs to be had, is what is the intent of the city? Is it to preserve open space, or is it to preserve this idea of producing food or producing something that's going away with the development of our land? And that's what needs to be decided, to me, to make this ordinance one way or another, is that's what it hinges on. Not so much all these other things, but what's the intent behind the ordinance? I don't have an opinion myself on either one yet, because I don't think that discussion's been had, but to me, that's the crux of the problem here, or the question, and that's probably what the city council's grappling with, is do we want to make it easy for these to come in? If someone gets 5 acres and can produce something on it, because we like the open space, or we want to preserve the heritage of Lindon that used to have orchards and vineyards and animals, and that's what we're trying to preserve, and those are two very different questions.
And I think what's great about that, about your question, is we have two very different answers sitting here in the room.
Yes.
I mean, they can easily go, you know, because Alan's very passionate about the agriculture and what the agricultural came before that use, and it's vice versa for the Walker Farm. So I think that's a very good question. Now, it's almost like difficult for us to.
And if I, just watching the meeting a couple times and trying to type out their comments and stuff, I think they want to make that 40% agricultural. That's got to be the purpose why someone's coming in, to preserve that. And to help me preserve that, I need a reception center, but my primary focus needs to be the agricultural requirement.
More in line with Wadley Farms model that they created.
I think that's what I was getting at when I watched those a couple times.
Except I don't think they wanted more reception centers, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so, under that, then if that's what they want, then I think we have to have a discussion of how we, for future applicants, meet that intent, right? Well, what's that, how do we meet that intent? If that's the intent of the city council, who are elected officials who pass the laws for our citizens. We're just a sounding board, but that's how I really look at that question.
Isn't that the way it's already written in a way, except with the term reasonable expectation of profit? It's already defined as 40% agricultural, or you could say substantial agriculture or whatever, and just eliminate reasonable expectation and just put revenue.
And maybe, if, you know, the way the ordinance is written, if you look at it, it lists all the permitted uses and conditional uses under 12, and then you go to 15 about the agricultural requirement. Maybe the agricultural requirement needs to be first as the primary focus there of the ordinance.
Maybe the order in the ordinance would be helpful.
That too, so. Okay, I think we've.
But once again, does this trigger, is this a, we change the ordinance to do that and then we have a non-complying?
No.
Okay, we're not gonna chase Walker Farms out, which is providing a great service to the community.
Yeah. No, and that's not the intent at all, is to chase anybody out. It's just, as the council's going through this, they wanna just evaluate, are we in a good spot with this ordinance?
Yeah, I think they're just trying to make sure, especially if they're additional properties, you know, that want to come under this commercial farm zone, that they meet the intent of why it was set up.
Okay. The last item I wanted to discuss with you,
Mike, while you're looking that up, I just had, the thought that comes to my mind is I just would love more opportunities to come enjoy your properties. I have to wait for somebody to send me a wedding invitation to go. Like, I've seen your big building one time, it was gorgeous. I've never been able to come back. And so I'd love the experience of going and grabbing some apple cider donuts or something on the way home, or, you know, having a little ice cream date with my wife or something. I love the idea of being able to have more reasons than just a wedding reception to come and enjoy your property. And I've been to some of these kinds of things in New England and most recently in Portland, and they were doing some really creative things. I mean, one of the things that they did, they had about a 3-acre plot of just flowers, and you could buy a twisty tie, like one this long or one this long, and they'd give you scissors and you go cut the flowers and whatever you could fit around that twisty tie, you know, whether it was a $10 bouquet or a $15 bouquet. I thought that was, I have no idea if that's profitable, but I thought that was a fun experience to do something like that, and it was beautiful. So, I mean, I think
I'm going on vacation.
A tropical island vacation at that, right?
I just, again, my point is just, I love the idea of coming to and I love the idea that it would be a working farm or a working agricultural production. I think a lot of people love that. Just being able to have that experience, other than going there for a wedding reception, is nice to go there for other reasons.
Those are the future goals, and
I know, you've got
these
some things,
conditional uses are kind of where we're discussing and hashing that out as.
yeah. I love it,
other
you're on the
options
right
that bring
track.
the community getting involved, and they fall under that commercial farm zone permitted uses, so.
Yeah, and I know you have employed people around your neighborhood, teenagers and things. I love that idea too, that there's job opportunities for teenagers to come work on a farm. I mean, they don't get that opportunity. I mean, where do you just can't provide that opportunity anymore for these kids.
Okay, do you want to come up the front so you? I know, but there's those that listen online that.
I appreciate what you're talking about here, and I just wonder if maybe you should put something in there on this commercial farm zone about storing unused equipment or unusable equipment or bringing in junk from other areas and storing it here. I mean, I don't think there's anything within this zoning that even addresses that, and if it isn't there, it can run away with you. As it has on my residential zone neighbor.
Right.
I just wonder if there should be, is there anything in there, Mike, that would prevent bringing in old tractors or manure spreaders or combines or trailers or whatever?
There's not.
No, and that's sort of hard, because some people might see an old dilapidated tractor as art sitting out in front of a farm. You know, so it's really hard
Well,
to.
if you want to see a lot of art, come and look in the back of my house.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying for this zone.
But I wonder, while you're talking about it, if maybe you should put something in there to prevent problems in
And to
the
protect
future.
the neighborhoods and that, huh?
Not to protect someone else's neighborhood.
Where does that end?
Yeah, and isn't the fact that this is a commercial farm zone, they're trying to make money, and they're doing it like, so if Alan put a pile of junk out in front of his castle, that might detract from his mission. And so I don't think that would probably happen, but it's possible.
I don't know.
Well, I think the commercial farm zone has a stipulation for fencing. You might address
It
that.
does have a fencing
I think
requirement.
Jorgensen's have put 6 foot, and I put 8 foot and 12-foot cement
There is a
fences.
6 foot, there is a 6 foot in here, but I don't know. Maybe storage of unused equipment or something. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So,
I wanted to just talk about is the 40% building coverage for these two zones. So I just tried to measure from aerial photos. So I'm probably definitely off by a few percentage marks, but looking, Wadley Farms has 18 acres. Looking at the building coverage from an aerial photo, measuring that, looks like they cover about 5%. And the ordinance allows you to cover 40% of your property into buildings. So that would allow Wadley Farms to go up to 318,000 square feet of commercial space. Now you still would have to meet parking requirements, so that's gonna take that back down. But essentially you could, if you had enough parking. Now with Walker Farms, they cover about 9% of the lot. And so they could build up to 105,000 square feet. And so I'm wondering, is that building coverage, does that take away from does that make that become that more dominant use than the agricultural production from the property?
and not as much open space.
Why is the building coverage in there essential when you already have 40% agricultural? I mean, you already have one, so for us to be in here trying to guess what amount of building coverage, we obviously tried to guess once before and we were way off the mark. So that sort of covered by the 40% agricultural?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, being an accountant, I can do the math, right? So that means 20% parking. If you do 40, 40, and 20, the max parking, right, would be 20% if you're trying to build it out, which isn't gonna produce enough parking for 40%. So they seem, so I think, kind of like Scott said, I think making sure 40% is agricultural kind of takes care of the rest. I don't know if that's even.
Is the agricultural though counted like a horse barn, is that counted the agriculture?
It does. It says all buildings and structures.
But I think,
Farm buildings and structures or like houses?
It just says buildings and structures, so houses, your farm building, your, greenhouse,
center?
reception center. Yeah, it doesn't distinguish between those.
So can then my math be wrong because the agricultural use could also be the barn? So could that be counted twice so you can have a sum greater than 100?
Yeah.
Right, because if you had a barn and that was agricultural use, it's also a building use. Okay, so that maybe, as we think about that, then maybe we.
Yeah.
so Mike, I always understood that the 40% open space did not include structures or associated amenities such as parking. That was always carved out, that 40% was sacred, that was open space, agricultural. That's how we've interpreted it and how
Right.
we originally wrote the conditional farm use intent.
Yeah.
So it says in the commercial farm zone, all buildings, including accessory buildings and structures, shall not cover more than 40% of the area of the lot or parcel of land or a conglomeration of parcels as defined in 5120.
Yeah, but I think the question from Alan, our question is on the 40% agriculture. Does that have to be open space land or can that include barns? How is that the first 40% written?
Does that first 40% preclude?
Well,
At this point, we're kind of guessing. It's not clear in here.
So maybe that's what I'd lean more towards, is making the 40% open space and not worried about the buildings. That kind of takes care of it. If we do my math, 40% this, 40% building, or it doesn't really matter, parking would take care of. But if we made sure the 40% was open.
And we're gonna require parking for every building, they do. So that's why I'm saying that to try to limit the size of the building is a little bit different than trying to just sticking with 40% agriculture.
Well, then there's buildings that might not require any parking. If someone builds the ranch house, it's not, that's different than a commercial with parking or whatever, so.
Skyscraper on it and has a small footprint.
But maybe we need to look at the definition of what the first 40% is, if that's open space, or if that includes barns, or if that, I would think that we'd want that to be open space, active agricultural open space.
I think
That's what I understood.
that was the intent, and I believe
Right.
the Jorgensen's are 2 acres open space. We're certainly compliant with that.
Yeah, I think they're compliant, but maybe we need to clarify that in the code. I mean, I'm somewhat intrigued, Mike, by the last suggestion about number of uses by acreage, because you have someone that has 5 acres. Same thing, though, parking and stuff's gonna preclude them putting 6, a restaurant and name all, it's just gonna preclude that, but, so maybe that's not necessary either, but it intrigues me a little bit if there was a sliding scale by the number of acres, by the number of conditional uses they could have, maybe the number of parking lots they can have, or something like that.
That's pretty convoluted.
Yeah, so I think it takes care of itself by parking.
I think so.
It takes care of itself by parking and the overall 40% agricultural, active agricultural open space.
Preservation.
Yeah, I think that in itself does it.
Okay, Mike, do you need additional feedback on this?
I don't think so. It sounds like you're good with the uses, how they are. keep the building coverage, cause it'll be regulated by parking and
Parking
open
and
space.
agricultural.
The, maybe tighten up the ag language a little bit more, but, I mean, I'm not hearing a huge,
As far as, well, I think they wanted kind of tightened up on profit or revenue.
Profit or revenue, I think
Yeah.
I think those are important.
Yeah.
That's an important distinction. Reasonable expectation of profit's pretty broad, and it's not reasonable to expect a profit from a small 5-acre farm. So how could, so it's sort of difficult to say that.
yeah, okay. That's all I had.
Give
I know
some good
Mr. Jorgensen
information.
would like to discuss one item really quick,
Oh, okay.
while we're talking about the ordinance itself.
Thank you for being with us. I guess you're still waiting for a visa. Oh,
I didn't see the badge, I just thought you were dressing for the occasion. Congratulations. Congratulations.
He told me Papua New Guinea, but he's really in the Orem.
Well, I didn't know this was the place to bring it.
it's
He's in
what?
the Orem, Utah, not Papua New Guinea.
But he's going to a tropical island vacation, so yeah.
Where are you going?
Papua New Guinea.
Are you really?
Go ahead, and or do you want me to lead out on this?
Well, no, we just wanted to put in a greenhouse where our garden is. You pulled it up, see
Garden's
those
right
6
here.
boxes right there? We want to put a greenhouse there. The question is, we kind of want it for aesthetics, for picture taking, just to kind of look cool but she will, right now we have a couple classes we put in the barn for felting, the alpaca stuff that
Okay.
those small animals, things like that. So
Mike,
like,
let me have you talk in the mic.
there you go. And so my question is that we have to, it's really more of it's not a commercial use as much as it is an aesthetic use in a greenhouse, but the setbacks for non-commercial use is 30 feet, but since we're on the corner, it's 30 feet both ways. However, that street is not the city's.
What street is not the city?
Fifth East. It's owned by the school. They never deeded it to you. You got a right of way. My question could we, I know that you have to have an ordinance when we got our variance, not our variance, when we wanted to move our 30 feet of landscape barrier between the road and our parking lot. Our parking lot sits so far below 500 East that 30 feet of landscaping was better used dividing up the parking lot, because you wouldn't see the 30 feet of landscape anyway, because it would be below the curb level. And so they rewrote the ordinance to say that you wouldn't have to have the 30 feet landscape between the road if you were across the street from a school that was not required to have the same 30 feet of landscaping in front of their parking lot. 'Cause I guess schools don't, if you looked at the bottom of the screen, you can see Rocky Mountain. See their mow strip right there is, basically 10 feet from the road, because they don't have to abide by any of the city ordinances of planning. And so somebody rewrote the ordinance that allowed us to have just the same amount of landscaping, that 10 feet of grass right there with the trees, and not have to have the 30 feet, and then we put the 30 feet in between the 2 parking lots. I know the ordinance was written specifically because it had to be the same for everybody. And so my question is okay, since we're up on Center Street, if we put that greenhouse there, if we abide by the setback from the one road, could we have only the 10-foot side yard setback, because that's not a Lindon City road?
What would your setback be on Main Street?
On
It would be
Center
Center
Street,
Street, I mean,
Center
Center
Street would be the 30 feet.
30 feet.
30 feet. Can you measure that, Mike? Can you
Actually,
measure,
it's more
can
than
you see
30.
the trees from the,
There too.
So,
I'm
yeah,
not
so
quite understanding where the 10-foot is that you're wanting.
To the right of his
so the,
cursor.
so the greenhouse would go right here, but the ordinance requires a 50-foot setback for all commercial buildings, along any street.
50 foot?
50 foot. And so the greenhouse doesn't fit here. Your setback,
Well, I'd argue that one of the arguments is the greenhouse is not really a commercial, it's not a commercial use.
I think once you're doing some educational classes in there,
And
that kicks it into
Becomes a commercial.
that commercial use.
Yeah.
And it is the conditional use, it calls out greenhouses as a conditional use. And so,
Yeah.
you would be required to hit that 50-foot setback over here, which 50 feet is, yeah, the sidewalk.
Now, you said you have a garden there right now?
Yeah, that's what's in
This is
those
a garden
boxes,
right
is
here.
garden.
What about Mike's thought that Fifth East isn't a city street?
I have not, we just talked about that before, 2 minutes before the meeting. I'm sure it's a city street.
Do we maintain it?
We do maintain it, yes. But I've done no title work or anything like that, but.
I kinda bet it is a.
Well,
It sounds
by-
like you're gonna have to have that 50-foot setback.
By legal definition, a highway is any roadway that's maintained by the public for the purpose of vehicular traffic, and that's clearly what that is, and I think you could articulate that that's where, that's what we were trying to come off of, the roadway so it definitely meets the definition of a roadway.
What about, there's that building there's the old original meat storage that, it's got the red brick going around could we add on to that?
To the east,
Where is that, Mike?
Right
the
there where
west,
he's got,
this
right
one
there,
here.
that one right there, just add on to the north of that.
to the west.
You could add on to the north of it.
I think it's probably non-conforming
probably
though.
non-conforming.
Sidewalk to get 50
Yeah,
feet.
he's grandfathered in where he's in there, he can go west, which is into his property, which he doesn't want to.
Well, how far setback is that right now?
30 feet.
30.
So it's a non-conforming use, but it's there.
Yeah, you can add.
Where's the street, the property line, considers it 2 feet behind the sidewalk for,
That's typically that's typically where the property line is.
Does it matter if it's a permanent structure versus something that's temporary?
Yeah, some greenhouses would be considered.
It says greenhouse. That's all it says in the conditional
Yes, I
uses.
mean, if you built it to where it's
Not on footings and
not on
foundations.
footings and foundation, it seems.
You're probably planning on putting it on a footing and foundation, aren't you?
we just have cement floor on it, but I'm looking at these kids that just come in and just
Yeah.
erect like an erector set,
Yeah.
really.
If it didn't have a footing and foundation, I'd say it
I think
temporary.
if you look at the ordinance, it says shall apply to the following commercial buildings / structures. So I think that's where it's any structure.
Would this greenhouse require a building permit?
If it's over 200 square feet, yes.
Yeah, see, so that's neither,
After that, yeah.
yeah, so it's,
Per structure, so you
Unless,
have 3 greenhouses.
yeah. Mike, you'd have to petition the planning commission and council for an ordinance amendment.
To
For
do
that.
what? To build
the
it closer to
setback.
the road or the setbacks, okay. Well,
But
that
then if
would,
we couldn't apply that just specifically to his property though.
that would be
Existing or
that would be the same argument we had on that 30 feet of landscaping, very, very specific. You can do it anywhere in the city if you're across the street from a school. So I kinda got that education when they said whatever ordinance we do, it has to be able to
To apply.
apply for anybody and everybody,
Right,
so.
and so that would be my concern on trying
So
to
if
do
you're
an
next to a
ordinance
school that the
amendment.
city has not taken proper possession or ownership of for title work, then you can be closer to it than the normal 50 feet
But
setback.
this isn't close to a school though, right there.
Oh, the school's property. Alpine School District, still title on Fifth East. Which is interesting.
Gotta be an oversight or something.
It was something that was, Reed Walker explained it to me once, and I don't remember what his explanation was, but they were supposed to deed it over, and they never did. And then they
Well,
wouldn't
that'd
after
be
they,
neat if you could, if you could put in something like that.
That'd be kinda
An
cute, just-
educational type thing, if it could meet
There's
Okay.
some rule
the ordinance.
okay, thank you.
that it becomes
Okay,
public.
thank you. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're not fitting into the box.
So I think you can,
Okay. Well, and we do very much appreciate both of you and your time tonight and also just what you've contributed to the city. Thank you very much. And we hope you get to go on a vacation to Papua New Guinea sometime soon.
Try not to get shot.
maybe all the kids are hopeful for that too, right?
They said October he was leaving, and here we are.
Thank you so much, all.
Thank you.
Would you like a break for a minute before we jump into
Anyone need a
subdivision? or you-
break, or do you want to just go ahead with the next?
I'm okay.
Item.
Yeah, just talk about subdivision updates.
Okay, we're going to go ahead. This next item on the agenda is also a work, discussion and work item. It's item number 6, subdivision zoning and land development policies, stand specifications and drawing manual.
Yep.
So, and Mike Florence is presenting stuff.
Okay. So this past legislative session, the legislature passed Senate Bill 174, which said that the city council, the legislative body, can no longer hear subdivision approvals for single-family lot developments, two-family lot developments, and townhome developments. And so what that does, it makes the planning commission the land use authority, the preliminary land use authority for those applications. And so what we've done is we're also proposing that you would just be you'd be the land use authority for basically all subdivisions. So the legislature has really tried to do this division between legislative authority and administrative authority over the past few years. And they want councils to just stick with their administrative authority, their legislative authority. The planning commission, you're an administrative body. And so they want you to be approving the subdivisions. Now, our subdivisions in Lindon, how they currently, let's just talk about a 3-lot subdivision. You're the preliminary land use authority on that, and then the development and review committee, which is myself and the city engineer and Mary, we're the final land use authority. We take care of all the technical, legal descriptions, signature blocks, and so that's the way this would remain. You would be the preliminary authority on all subdivisions. So the state law says, it's only those 3 types, but we're saying, we also think, let's just give you all subdivisions. So condominium subdivisions.
Townhomes.
Townhomes would already be with you. Any type of major subdivision, all goes before the planning commission from here on out.
That's big, to say that Anderson Farms would come before us and without any input from city council.
So the way
No,
that,
not necessarily, because there was no zoning for Anderson.
that's correct. That's where the council gets to have their say, is
okay.
on the zoning.
Okay.
And so,
See, it wouldn't exist without the zoning first.
Tilia Court
was
would not
no zoning.
exist. The
Okay, that's a safeguard.
Songbird Cove wouldn't exist. Ivory Homes wouldn't exist. Mike's spot on. That the council will get their review on whether or not to change a zoning ordinance or not.
Okay.
And
So they're still on the hot seat, Scott.
yes.
Yeah, and that was one of
All
my
right, good.
questions when
I didn't want the entire monkey on my back.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had with Mike when I was talking with him is, you know, the council has always wanted to do major subdivisions. And I'm going, where does their input
See,
come
I think
in?
what the state's trying to do is once the zoning is in place, then it needs to be carried out administratively and not have a bunch of people that go get elected to be on city council just to shut things down.
Yeah. And if you think of,
They're done with that in the state.
So we're just applying whether it
We
meets the zoning ordinance
administer
or
it
not.
once, yeah, but again,
Okay,
all that forethought and zone changes and everything else is still in the seat that it needs to be in, and that's.
And
city
that typically comes to us for then a recommendation to council. They actually do the zone, and then it would come back to us. Okay.
and if you think about it, in our zoning and subdivision ordinances, we already define the minimum frontage, we define the minimum lot size, we define, you know, the street width, the sidewalk width, the curb and gutter width, everything's already adopted, and we're just applying these items.
Okay.
And so that's the main thing on that. There's other things like the planning commission can't hold more than one public hearing. Well, we don't hold public hearings for subdivision anyway, so we're good with that. City staff can't do more than 4 review cycles. And so basically when a subdivision comes in, we need to make sure that it's complete in the very beginning and not take something that's partial, and making sure that, you know, we can't ask for anything after the 4th review, you know, we have to make sure everything's updated first. So part of our it's called our Land Development Policy Standard Specifications Manual, where we have to update our checklist as well to make sure we've got everything in our checklist so the developer knows what needs to be provided. So that'll be part of this whole bundle of changes that we're making.
Mike, is a lot of that, their purpose and intent behind this is to streamline developers and people coming in for applications?
Streamline and standardize.
Standardize,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's the next one on that House Bill 406, is that they're saying if it's a local residential roadway that has a speed of 25 miles an hour, has less than so many trips, you can have a maximum pavement width of 32 feet. Our current ordinance says 34 feet, so we would have to decrease that pavement width, and let me.
Increase or decrease?
Decrease, sorry.
It's 32.
So what our engineers are saying is they would really love to have a 5-foot sidewalk. Right now we have a 4-foot sidewalk requirement. So what they're saying is, okay, let's do the 32 feet of pavement, but for new subdivisions, let's do a 5-foot sidewalk.
That makes sense.
But what we wrote in the ordinance amendment is that, you know, let's take Center Street, for example. We don't want 4-foot, 5-foot, 4-foot, 5-foot. So if something's existing, we're saying the city engineer can approve a consistent sidewalk width so that we stay with 4 feet, you know, for example, on the street.
And we have to understand, based on what I'm reading there, the way I'm reading, that there is a definition of local road. That's a local road. That's not an arterial. That's not fourth north, fourth east. That's the typical residential neighborhood that doesn't receive federal funding for maintenance. It's just a local road.
That's correct. Yeah, I've got it in here someplace, that definition of residential roadway width. Yeah, I can't find it right offhand, but yeah, it's at 25 mile an hour, less than so many trips a day, something, you know, so yeah, we would adopt that same state definition. Couple other things, let me make sure I've gone through everything on Senate. Oh, going back to Senate Bill 174, it also changes the appeal authority. So what it says is that if there's a engineering requirement there's a dispute about, then then there's appeal authority of a engineer the city recommends, an engineer that the developer recommends, and then one that they'd agree on. And then they discuss those, they'll be the appeal authority on that. City has to pay 50%, developer has to pay 50%.
Right now, it's what, going to the state?
Right now, it goes to the,
Never is.
right now it would go to the Board of Adjustment. And that's another thing that we're taking, so it depends on the type of subdivision. So right now, if it's a major subdivision, more than 3 lots, the appeal authority is the Board of Adjustment. Right now, if it's 3 lots or less, the city council is the appeal authority. Now, there's 2 different, sorry, and I think I just confused this. On an engineering specification, it would go to that panel. If it's some other type of appeal, then it would go to this column right here, this appeal authority.
And we're removing the city council from
We're
that.
removing the city council and just putting in a Board of Adjustment. And we're also looking at maybe getting rid of our Board of Adjustment and going to an administrative law judge that, can stay consistent and up to date on these things. So.
Other cities done that?
We used one in South Salt Lake. Brian Hawes is he's the administrative law judge for Lehigh City.
Okay.
A lot of cities are going to this administrative.
So somebody with cred that, yeah.
That attorney who trained us last time.
Yes. And so in the future, we'll probably come back and change this appeal authority again. So, but for now, we're saying Board of Adjustment for minor for any type of appeal other than an engineering specification.
Right.
So,
And I asked that question, the Board of Adjustments right now, I mean, they only hear an appeal every few years, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, I've only met with them twice in the last 5 years. One time to approve the meeting minutes from 3 years previous, and the second time to hear a variance.
And that's why it makes sense to do what we're talking about
The
doing.
administrative law judge,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're current on,
Yep.
especially if we're gonna be approving all the major subdivisions.
Yeah. So those are the main points. So in 2 weeks, what we'll be bringing to you is this subdivision code update, amendments to the zoning ordinance. So right now, what the zoning ordinance says that the council can call up any type of application. So if you remember, they did that on Wadley Farms in June. The planning commission became the recommending body on everything, and they called up themselves to be the final authority.
So they won't be able to do that anymore.
We're saying they can still do that for everything except subdivisions.
Okay. So
And-
are you putting all of this together in an ordinance? Is that-
Yes, yep.
Okay.
What I wanted to do is just give you a heads up, give you a quick overview.
In case anybody wants to quit.
Yeah. And we'll bring this to you next
Well, it
time
all
in an
makes
ordinance.
sense, and in order to comply with the new state code, we gotta do it.
Well, and we have to do it by February 1st. That's the mandate they gave us. And so, no offense to Lincoln, but I'd like to get this done before the new council comes in, just because they are familiar with these.
We want you to get it done.
They're familiar with what's been going on, so.
Might as well learn the new ways of doing things.
Yeah, and that, so we'll only have 2 meetings in January with the new council, and so, I wanted just to try and get this done. So I wanted to give you a heads up, this meeting, that we're gonna hold a public hearing on all these changes at the next planning commission meeting,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Anything else on this then?
Nope, and if you see
Okay.
any changes, please reach out to me, so.
Okay, and this was just a discussion or a work item, so there's no motion or anything on it?
Sharon,
Uh-huh,
can I make just a point of clarification?
yeah, if you'll come up to the front, yes, uh-huh.
Oh, it's just for you guys. I'm Greenbelt, the 5 1/4 acres is if you want to have a residence on the property, you have to have
Correct.
5 1/4. You can have a 5 acre parcel in Greenbelt, but if you want to build a home on it, you have to have 5 1/4.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, I know that many on the commission weren't quite sure on the green belt.
So years ago, some people developed some property on West Mountain and they divided everything into 5 acre parcels instead it was all in Greenbelt.
So you couldn't build a
and
house.
sold it as residential properties and all these people bought these parcels and found out they couldn't build on it. They
Throw 'em out of Greenbelt.
And some of them are still for sale because they can't build on them
Oh.
in Greenbelt.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information. We appreciate you being here and
For 30 years.
and appreciate you helping to educate us. Thank you.
And Commission, can I ask you one other question? Sorry, I forgot this one item. So flag lots. So the current ordinance says if you want to do a flag lot, you have to show that they're only permitted in 2 circumstances. At the time of application, development using standard public streets is not possible.
Okay.
And then the other one is development using standard public streets is possible, but not in the best interest of the public. And so from a flag lot perspective, we always look at it, whether or not a street could go in there and whether we want a street to go in there. Would we like to change that to make it easier for flag lots?
Yes.
I think so.
I think the way that Lindon's developing and, you know, big acreage and everything, we're gonna end up with a lot of property and behind houses that can't be used.
I mean, we'd still keep the standards of having a 25-foot frontage with they call it the pole, you know, and still the lot requirements, but do we want to take, because we always approve them. Every time someone comes in for a flag out, we say, yeah, we don't want a road there, we're gonna approve, you know, we approve it. Do we want to just make that easier and not have to evaluate whether a public street should go through there or
So you're
not?
saying strike B, is that what you're saying?
I'd probably rewrite
A?
to A and B.
Yeah.
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah, to the point Rob makes, that we're gonna end up with a bunch of non-usable property, and it's worked well in other places when it's done.
And we already do say you can't have 2 flag lots adjoining,
And
so
I
there's
think
gotta be
that-
some separation.
I even don't see a problem with that.
Yeah,
For example, if you've got a 50-foot frontage and the property goes back and tees, why not have 2 flag lots? You know,
In other words, a hammerhead that serves,
yeah,
that the lane serves 2 residences
but
versus
they could be
one.
2 lanes,
Yeah.
yeah.
and that I may wanna come back and, you know, after we get this adopted to be compliant with state law, something like that I may want to, address at a future time. I think that would be good.
I think you need 120 feet, is that what it is, or 110 feet?
You need 100
Frontage.
feet
100 feet of what?
of lot width. It-
Only 100?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our ordinance says you have to have 50 feet of frontage, but 100 feet of lot width. So, because what that does is then it takes in for a cul-de-sac and stuff, so,
at the setback,
yeah.
the 30-foot setback, you're needing 100 feet back
But
there.
25 feet for a flag lot, and then isn't there a depth requirement, or is there?
There's not a depth requirement, but there's
In
the
other words,
acreage. Your 20,000 square foot lot doesn't start until the end of the pole
Right.
portion.
The end
And
of,
the pole can be a long ways,
Mm-hmm.
but then it has to have 100 feet.
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm gonna work on the flag lot a little bit. And
Okay.
so, okay, thank you for letting me bring that back up.
joint use
And it looks like we're pretty much done, other than comments from commissioners or things commissioners would like to bring up.
I'd just like to point out that Monday night, city council, they'll be discussing the bond for the purchase of the property on 700 North. So if you support that or whatever, it's an opportunity to, they will take public comment.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So the last meeting I missed, you guys talked about apartments in the Anderson Farm area.
We did.
I saw, I was like watching that and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I might have an opinion about that.
We know, we acknowledged that you were
Yeah, I
gone,
saw
and
that.
you
I was like,
probably would
yeah,
have.
I mentioned
that
it
was
to
true.
her that,
Accessory apartments,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've actually talked to quite a few people about it, and it's so mixed on what they think, except everyone is concerned about parking. Whether they're okay with it or not, the parking is tricky because, like you said, they're so close together. But then the newer ones, those lots are bigger, and the ones they're building now, so I don't know. But there are quite a few people that do have, I don't know if family members count, if they have, you know, because, I mean, there's a lot of people, right? They don't, right? Okay.
yeah, family.
But then there's other ones where they are renting it out, so, I mean, it
Thanks
might.
for being here with us.
Thanks for putting up with me.
Go ahead.
No, I think I was mostly curious why the restrictions got put in place in the first place and what the reason is of thinking of not doing it. Do you know what I'm saying? Taking those restrictions off.
So that was something when they created that zone down there, that Anderson Farms Plan Development Zone, they put in there that you couldn't do accessory apartments, because they felt like they were already increasing the density, decreasing the road widths, and decreasing the lot sizes.
Driveways are small.
Yeah, well, the garages are small,
Yeah.
right?
And so that was the reasoning. Then the state, a few years later, came through and said, cities, you have to allow them. We're mandating that you have to allow accessory apartments, but you could prohibit them in 25, I think, % of your community. And you can prohibit them on lots less than 6,000 square feet. And so we took them, we basically kept with our zoning ordinance and said, okay, Anderson Farms, we're not going to allow them in this area, or Fieldstone, you know.
Because they are the smallest lots in the city already,
Yeah,
and we meet the state code by the 25%
Yeah.
rule.
And then, so then we've just had lots of people asking us about doing accessory apartments down there. And so, because we've also had real estate agents telling people, yes, you can do one down there, and people are buying them and then finding out they can't do them. And so
I see. And
that's
there's
why I
people
brought
are
that
just
up
doing
last
it.
time. Do we want to start allowing them? So,
On the
Yeah.
6,000 foot, how many of the homes are on lots bigger than 6,000 square feet?
I don't have a number.
Yeah,
I can find that out for you, but at the top of my head, I couldn't.
I'm just curious, you know, how many of
The
them
ones they're
exceed
building
that,
now.
You'd have at least 100 lots.
My daughter's south
that are
of
beyond that?
traffic circle.
Because that's not a very big lot, though, even,
Hers is
you
good,
know.
hers is a
Yeah.
decent.
I know there are a
30
few
foot
that are,
setbacks.
that are pretty good size, but not very many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots
I mean, you do have, you've got some 11,000 square foot lots down there. You've got some good size, that estates section
There's
of,
just a few, though. I mean, the majority aren't.
yeah, I can run a quick audit and send it
It'd
to
be
you guys and we
interesting.
could.
Yeah, it'd be
I
interesting.
think that'd be interesting. I think it'd be interesting to explore it, but I think, yeah, it'd be interesting to see which ones are the bigger lots, because I could see it more like, okay on those.
Yeah, right.
So the general consensus of your neighbors was no based on parking, though?
Everyone was worried about parking, and in fact, it has been an issue, because there are some people that do have people renting
Yep.
the basement, and the parking is a nightmare. And I told them, you should probably say something.
And they're all over the street.
Yeah. And those streets are narrow, so it's a safety concern too.
Right.
I mean, emergency vehicles and everything, I think
Well-
you have to take that into consideration for it.
Affects quality of life.
Yeah, yeah,
Even when you do provide off-street parking, oftentimes they do park in the street. So I think
yeah. Yeah, so I
it
can
really is
see
an
it.
issue down there. I'm a huge fan of accessory apartments, but
Yeah, I think it
there are some
is.
drawbacks in that area
Right.
doing that.
I agree.
Big time.
I agree.
If you look at this estates phase right here, so this phase right here, every one of those are at least 10,000 square feet.
Oh, yeah, that's
That's
where
where
your
my daughter
daughter is.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where my daughter lives.
And then these are about 5,000 square feet
Those
here.
are really small.
See, that,
Yeah,
some
those
of
are
those
small.
areas would be really
And
hard.
then, and these are the ones we've almost had more problems in with accessory apartments in these smaller lot
And I think
areas.
part of the reason why is they didn't, they were supposed to be 55 plus, but they weren't deed restricted, so young families bought them, and now they want to use that accessory apartment as a way to offset their mortgage.
Right.
Yep.
They can live in
Yeah.
their small family can live in the main home and they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this section here, they run between 8,000 and 13,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's the part
Yeah, up here
Talking
you're.
about.
Yeah, you're between 6 and 9,000 for this section, and yeah, I think you're between 6 and 9 down here.
Looks like the same
as
on the
well.
other two sections.
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think, you know, if, maybe you look at lots that are greater than a certain square
That's
footage.
what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I don't know what that is yet, maybe we need to go down there for a tour and see what feels good. I mean, you've got a lot of 3-car garages down in this area. At the,
Lot of 'em.
That's the estates section, so.
Yeah. I could see it on something like that, but I agree with these tiny lots. It's become a mess, yeah.
So what is the region that is included in that 25% of the city that doesn't allow?
The entire Ivory Homes.
Yeah, and
So this
Fieldstone, right?
whole area down here, and then the 2 townhome developments, Tilia Court and Songbird Cove. Those are the 3 areas we prohibited them in. And I think
And-
that covers about 5 or 6% of the city, of our
Well, and-
residential areas, sorry.
Yeah. Anderson Farms, that was part of the development agreement that was put together as far as the
Yeah, but then
ADUs.
state code trumped it, right?
Yes, and then we had to go in and identify areas that we,
And I've had Ivory real estate agents tell me they stopped telling people, they're just letting them buy,
yeah.
and they're not telling them.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's how,
Fieldstone, it's not an issue because we don't have basements, so it hasn't been a problem, but I could see.
So,
anyone
let's-
else?
let me put some numbers together and let's continue that discussion. So,
I just wanted to bring up with our training that we went to.
Right.
They did mention there that it was very recommended that the planning commission had no public comment. And so
Yeah,
that was-
I took, in fact, I talked to Mike, I made a whole list of the things that they, from that training. One was the conditional use information, one was the public comment section, and the caution about taking public comment in planning commission meetings, and then also the format we're following for public hearings that, staff presents, and then planning commission questions, and then we open the public hearing. So I met with Mike on that and brought all those things up, and he can respond to that. He talked to Brian Hawes about it.
yeah.
So go
So
ahead.
on that public comment period, Brian said we're okay to do it. You know, a lot of them come like the gentleman this evening, and you're like, sorry, go, talk to staff,
Yeah.
or go to the council. You guys don't have a lot of, authority on that. So it's really up to you, is what Brian said. You're welcome to keep it on your agendas, but,
You're talking specifically about the open period at the
Yes.
Yeah,
beginning.
the item number 3 on the agenda.
We
Yeah.
have so little of it.
We have so little.
And I think that the citizens need to feel like they have the opportunity to.
That's my.
See,
that's
Rob,
my
I think we
thing.
should keep it there, but then I think it ought to be very limited.
I do too.
outside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe a disclaimer too, or something, just our purpose. I mean, I think that's one thing they talked about too, that we really can't make any decisions. We're happy to listen to, you know, but we're not the body, maybe even to direct them. The body that would be able to make any decisions is really the city council.
And that's what we tell
Gentleman tonight, I
them.
think that he understood that. He just wanted to
Yeah.
make it known.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking for answers so much as he was.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that on the agenda.
Leaving
Yeah,
it
but
on.
I like Steve's idea too, maybe just leading out saying
Yeah.
that this, you know, this is a time, like Sharon does, it's a time for
Right.
public open comment.
I think she makes that
But
clear.
you know, just so you know, there's not,
But we're a body that just applies the law. We don't,
Right.
we don't have any authority to make any changes.
Yeah, I always tell them that.
yeah. The other thing, we talked about, like, for example, I think he said to open up the public comment after staff has made their
Right.
Right.
the recommendation. Brian said we can go either way. He's like, it's cutting hairs. He didn't have an issue.
And I think we even said we didn't have to, like, because we always open the public hearing before any
Right.
presentation.
Uh-huh.
And I guess is that the same, it doesn't matter as long as it's opened at some point?
Yeah, like in South Salt Lake, they opened it up for public hearing after staff's presentation. You guys opened it up right at the beginning. He
And it
didn't,
didn't
Brian
matter.
didn't really see a big issue
With
that.
doing it either way, the only thing that Mike brought up when I was visiting with him is that city council is following the same format we have been following in the past. Because what I said to Mike was, have I been doing this wrong forever? And I guess we can do it either way, but I wondered if we wouldn't want to be consistent with the way city council is doing it.
How do we do it differently?
Right,
No, right,
We
but you
are
do it the
doing it
same right
different
now.
We are doing it the same.
yeah, we are doing it the
Fine,
same
that's
now.
Not a problem. As long as we're not compromising a presentation by having the public hearing
The
open. then-
presentation during the public hearing,
Yeah,
yeah.
as long as that's fine,
I
then.
think that's kind of what he was just separating, was having a presentation, not in a public hearing part.
Right, we present and then we
Yeah,
actually
I'd
hear the
prefer
public
to
hearing.
make that change myself.
I think it makes more sense to say we present and everything, then we
Yeah, then
listen
we
to the
open the
public.
public hearing.
Because sometimes the
All right,
presentation
yeah, that's fine.
You know what,
is
it,
one-sided. It's
people
from
get
the
a
city's
misconception that they can start making public comments. In cities that I've presented in, I like it better when public hearings are not opened until after the
After
staff's, yeah.
Until after staff presents
That
and the
makes
planning
sense.
Yeah,
commission
I would
asks their
prefer that
questions.
myself.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
And maybe that would be a recommendation to the city council that we become uniform and they do the same. Yeah, if they wanted to, but that might be a good suggestion.
Okay, well, we can follow that format, and I talked to Mike about it yesterday, because that was one of my questions too.
Yeah.
So,
The only other thing I had is I see a bunch of pipe on Tim Klein's property, but I haven't seen any dirt move.
Yeah, let me talk about that and give you a little bit of background with the decision from the property rights ombudsman as well. And I haven't explained that, have I?
No,
I
I haven't
report on
heard,
that,
so-
okay. So basically, what the property rights ombudsman said was that our ordinance, we either needed to apply the 20 feet of landscaping with just a standard fence behind the 20 feet of landscaping, or the fence, or the wall, the 7-foot wall could go on the property line. One of those two options. So they gave,
The front property line.
yes,
Oh,
so
okay.
they gave Tim that option that he could put the wall on the property line behind the sidewalk, or do the 20 feet of landscaping and then a chain link fence with privacy slats. He wants to do the wall, the 2 feet behind the sidewalk. So,
Which is what we asked.
we asked for the 20 feet of
But
landscaping.
what I'm saying
and
is,
the wall.
we asked for the wall.
We did ask
But
for the
we
wall.
asked for, we
He
wanted the
wants
20.
to use the property, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would too.
So we approved his plans yesterday with the wall 2 feet behind the sidewalk. And so,
7 foot.
yes, and so he should be I mean, he's got a December 31st deadline of,
To have storm drain in.
to have phase one done.
Which I think was storm drain, if I remember right.
So I'm hoping, he thought going through this appeal process bought him more time. And we said, no, that's, the appeal process wasn't about the timing, it was about the wall. So I don't, do I have confidence that he'll have phase one done by December 31st? No. No, but,
It's good to know though that, because I've seen pipe on the property now, and so at least he's,
yeah.
I think, working towards
An intent?
an intent to put the storm drain in, you know,
Yeah.
or at least.
He has a reasonable expectation to get it done sometime in the near future. As ambiguous as that is.
Reasonable expectation.
I'm gonna ask,
Vision was the wall.
It's like the
Now,
phrase of the night.
Yeah.
with this decision, though, wasn't it just a recommendation, but the city's decided to go with the recommendation?
Yes.
Right, is that
It's a
my understanding of the process?
They're non-binding, but they're hoping that they're trying to give you a glimpse of how they think a court would decide.
Yeah, no, so they've decided, and that's fine, I'm fine with that.
so he's got 2 feet behind the sidewalk and then the wall. And then I asked the question, as
My-
far as that 2 feet, you know.
My
there
only
could be a lot of-
question would be, and this is a vested interest, is that site obscuring for
Egress?
the office building? As you come out there, is there enough?
That.
And so as long as that's, so that doesn't
Yeah,
present a safety hazard, that you're coming out and now you can't see up the road to make a turn. I just hate for a client to come out of there and get hammered because they can't see.
So that's what we did with that new 15 by 15 clear view triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we measured off of here, so I believe this is 20 feet so that would meet that clear view triangle. So you come to the edge of the driveway, come out 15 feet and back 15 feet, so that you should have that clear view on the sidewalk.
So there's a possibility that he will change that 3-foot fence that's
I don't think
currently
he's
there.
doing, let me just pull up his plan.
I mean, I'm just curious, just, because right now on that 10 feet or whatever, to the road, I think it drops to a 3-foot fence there.
Yeah.
Goes from an 8 to a 3.
Um,
Well, I guess it's all 20 feet. It's all the way into that, to where that lawn is a smaller fence. And we can talk about this afterwards if everybody else isn't interested in it.
You know, he has not followed the ordinance about not stacking things higher than the wall.
I sent him an email on that and said, I need you to acknowledge this, and he wouldn't respond, so. Sorry, I do not use this one very much. Sorry, where do I zoom in on here? Look at this.
We can look at it afterwards, I'm just curious.
Something for the children.
Sorry, I cannot find a zoom button on here.
It's been so, the kids like just walk there.
That looks like,
Here we go. He's not showing anything right here. So I don't know on that. I'll have to reach out to him.
Because does he still have the clear view triangle if that's a 7-foot wall all the way out to the street?
Yeah, he's creating a clear view triangle right here.
Oh, okay.
So his wall will come over this way with a gate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep,
Right
yep.
here. So he's created that clear view triangle here and
there just won't
here.
be anything out on the street there.
Right. It comes in.
Is that gonna be, is that clear view triangle landscaped or just concrete? Probably just
It'll
asphalt.
just be asphalt.
Asphalt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm just curious what he'll do. It'll be interesting to see what he, like I said, all the way along where that, our planter strip or whatever is, right? That's a 3-foot fence.
If I guess, he would probably want to extend your vinyl fence up to the same height.
Right, the 8-foot
The 8
along,
Yeah.
I guess I guess it's our fence. He made us pay for it, but I guess we'll talk to him about that.
We'll pay for this one.
Yeah, he can reimburse us for the fence
I
and
don't
fix
know,
it.
we can bring that up to him and ask him to reach out to you guys and discuss.
Yeah,
'cause-
just, I mean, I don't think we really have that we care, but just
Yeah.
that we're notified what's going on.
Okay, and then the other question was, other thing was just the information as far as a bank on this commercial property in front of Songbird Cove.
Yeah, we've just been working with Bank of America to go on the north lot, commercial lot at Songbird Cove. Sounds like they want to submit in the next week or so. So this may be coming to either your one meeting in December or your first meeting in January. So it's a very nice looking building.
There's just one other lot there? Or there are 3?
There's one other lot, but they've hemmed and hawed about maybe dividing that a little bit into
Smaller,
maybe
okay.
smaller
I just couldn't
commercial
remember, there
lots.
was a low book and then it kind of got divided up the way then we don't need to.
Driveway splits it a
The
little bit.
driveway splits it differently than I originally.
It's, so you have one commercial, so yeah, Low Book took this one.
Right, now there's,
So Bank of America is looking at this one here,
okay,
and then you have this one that they have maybe thought about
big,
dividing into half right here.
I guess there's another small one,
And you've got
Ah.
this here.
yeah, that's also commercial.
And they may want to divide that one, but I don't know what you can put on there, because it's really small.
What was the story of those 2 lots south? They really don't seem to have viable businesses. Were they just not willing to sell? Were they?
Not at this,
Scott, he runs his dental practice
Yeah.
over there still.
Is there something there?
There's a church and a dental practice, and then there's the heating.
And then there's.
Lindstrom Brothers.
Lindstrom Heating and Air there.
Is he-
They're
is it-
legit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a, because some of them look like they're not viable businesses.
He
Yeah.
Does he still live in Lindon?
Scott's dental office, he still works that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
He told me he's not retiring anytime soon. He's gotta be 70 something, isn't he? Or-
No, he's not that old.
Yeah,
You don't think he's
And-
in his 70s?
no, I think he is.
and we had the
Yeah.
first
Yeah, he is.
resident,
Yeah, he is.
I met the first resident that moved in, so.
oh, good.
They have sold.
Single family or townhome?
Townhome, yep, so there was,
Into
He's in
Songbird?
our ward.
yeah, they're in one of those front townhomes, I'm not sure exactly which
That's
one, but
cool.
there's,
As an owner or as a tenant?
as an owner,
As an owner.
is my understanding, I guess I have an asset, but she talked about her fridge being delivered and her, as if she had bought it, but, so, we'll see. We'll see how that
Rough market out there, man.
changes our neighborhood.
Okay, the only other thing is just a reminder of the Christmas party on the 15th. And you're supposed to RSVP for that, so.
So represent us.
So the rest of us need to go.
Oh, it didn't say in there typically, there's been times it's been family and times it's been +1. So it just said RSVP, it's just a +1, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the invitation specified.
Last year was really fun when they had the ventriloquist come in, and it was really fun.
Okay, well, are we ready to adjourn the meeting? And just mention, we're glad to have candidate Lincoln Jacobs with us.
Taking me so long to come and see what you guys really do.
Well, we just discussed things tonight. We're usually passing things and recommending things to city council, but tonight it was a discussion item, so. But thank you for coming. Okay, do I have a recommendation to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, let's go home.